Somebody confirm. Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you, Nitin. So let us start with today's class. Today I divided my lecture into two part. A part I will be introducing UML diagram, that is introduction to UML diagram, and in that I will cover how to draw a class diagram. Okay, so how to represent a class definition pictorially using UML class diagram. Okay, and if time permits, then I will discuss about the function overloading. Okay, so let us start with the first topic, that is, uh, as I mentioned you while discussing about the software engineering, that during the design phase, whatever is the requirement collected by the system analyst during the requirement acquisition phase, that need to be incorporated, but not in the form of code. Okay, so before actually going for the implementation or coding, we are required to create one blueprint of the project, software project. Okay, so this typical design phase will generate, during this design phase, one document will be generated which will take us from the requirement phase to the implementation phase. Okay, so coming to the software design phase, as I have already mentioned, that it specifies during this phase, what is being done is, that is specifying the structure of how a software system will be written and function. Okay, without actually generating the code or implementing the code. Okay, so this will be a typical transition from what the system must do to how the system will do. Okay, what the system will do, it is already mentioned in the requirement phase. Okay, and now the what are the requirements, which are the requirements, how those requirement will be accommodated, or the particular model will be generated, developed, it will be it will be designed during the design phase. Okay, the rough work will be done during the design phase. Okay, so typically the points to consider during the design phases, what classes we need to implement a system, okay, that meets our requirement, which is specified during the requirement analysis phase. Okay, then what, how many attributes should be there in that class. Okay, how the behavior of that class will be should be defined with the help of methods, member methods. Okay, other than the member methods, what are the different non-member functions will be required. Okay, then what kind of different interaction should be there between two classes. Okay, how the classes will interact each other. All this information will be actually put in um, together with a proper planning during the design phase. Okay, so when we talk about the design, so then it comes a very basic thing in object oriented is design of a class. Okay, once you have identified that, okay, in the problem domain or environment, this is one entity. Okay, and around which everything is going to be there, right? So and then you need to again split up and think about it. Okay, instead of having only one, can we split it here and there? Can we organize it like this? Fine. So the first focus will be, uh, we need to identify the classes. Okay, then their attributes, how they will behave and how they will interact with other classes. Okay, so that is the thing we need to analyze during the design phase, that is designing a class. Okay, designing a class. So um, typically when we no whether it should be represented as an class or object or field. Okay, so when we talk in our natural language, wherever you are using nouns, okay, wherever you are using nouns while describing that problem domain, you should think that, okay, that nouns are the potential classes, objects, or fields. Okay, at the same time, when you are talking in a natural language and wherever you are making use of verbs. Okay, so think that wherever you are using verbs, these verbs are potential methods or responsibilities of a particular class. Okay, and then you need to work out about the relationship between the nouns also. Okay, when you will work out about the relationship between the nouns, you will realize that they are the potential interaction. Okay, that is contentment, generalization, dependency, that we will see soon as we will go on. Okay, so in short, which noun in your project should be classes, which one are fields, what verbs should be methods, and what are potential interaction between your classes, whatever the classes you are considering. Okay, so that in this way you need to work out during the design phase. Okay, now one way of describing the design is using the UML diagram. Okay, again, it's a internationally standardized tool which is used in the during the design phase. Okay, so that is UML. As I mentioned at the start of this course, when we discuss about the content of the course, what I'm going to discuss. So UML stands for Unified Modeling Language. Okay, so it's a general purpose developmental modeling language in the field of software engineering that is intended to provide a standard way to visualize the design of a system. Okay, it includes pictures or views of the object oriented system. And as I mentioned just now, UML is an open international standard. Okay, this UML is used as a sketch to communicate aspects of system. Okay, uh, there are two ways: forward design, doing UML before coding. Okay, so we will be following forward design, that is doing UML before coding. Okay, and sometime if the system is when software solution which requires to be developed is not very large. Okay, then one can go for only for the selective development of UML. Okay, and not the complete one. As I mentioned repeatedly that it is used as a blueprint, a complete design to be implemented. Okay, and many tools are there, like Case is there, that is computer aided software engineering tool. Rose is there by IBM. Okay, so it depends. As a programming language with the right tool, code can be auto generated and executed from the UML. If you appropriately write develop your UML for a particular problem, then you can generate the code also. Now there are sophisticated UML tools, okay, software engineering tools available in the market. So that can also be used to generate the code. In some of the industry, you will find that they generate the partial code also using this. Okay. Now in UML, there are various type of representation use: class diagrams, object diagram, sequence diagram, use case diagram, collaboration diagrams, state charts, activity diagram, component diagram, deployment diagram, and so many. Okay, so majority of the topic will be discussed um, in software engineering course, but here in this course I will be restricting myself to the class diagram and the interaction between those class diagrams. Okay, so class diagram, this class diagram shows the classes and the relationship amongst them. Okay, it gives a static view of the system displaying what interacts, but not what happen when they do interaction. Okay, and sequence diagram, it just I mean how the system will work. If you are going to ATM to withdraw money, okay, so the person who wants the customer who wants to withdraw or deposit something, Okay, it will be called actor. Okay, and then what he will do, then what will happen, then what will happen. So all these are the sequence diagram, will be considered as a sequence diagram. Okay, that we will see later. So in today's class, I will be focusing only on the class diagram. Okay, so it's a pictorial representation of the class definition. Okay, including fields and method, and of course, if it is inherited by from another class, or if it is contained in another class, that connection will also be shown in the class diagram. Okay. What is not represented in a UML class diagram? Details of how classes interact with each other and algorithmic details. Okay. For example, if for implementing some functionality, if some sorting algorithm is required, so which sorting algorithm will be used? That implementation is not will not be there, but there might be one member function with the name sorting. Okay, with the name sort or something like that. So that implementation detail will not be mentioned in the class diagram. Okay, it's very simple, not very. So on the right hand side, I have shown the class diagrams. Okay, just now, ignore the first line, that is interface, because interface is a special kind of functionality feature which is not available in the C++, but it is available in the Java. Okay, so just remind me when I will discuss about the Java, that how to, I mean, otherwise the structure, it interface is just like a class, but its functionality is completely different. The way it is defined is little bit similar to the class, but functionality is completely different. Okay, so of course, its UML diagram of the interface will be similar to what I have shown here for the class rectangle and class student. Only above the name of the class, interface will be written. Okay, interface. Here it is not written anything. So if you look at the diagram, all of you will realize that a rectangle is divided into three parts. Okay, the first part will contains the name of that class. Okay, second part contains all the fields along with the access specifier and type. Okay, and the last portion of that class diagram, we have to mention all member methods. Okay, so here all data members will go. Here member functions will go. Okay, so attributes are nothing but the fields, that is data member, an operation or method. Okay, so except the class name, all other two fields are optional. Okay, it is not. I can have a empty class which is not having any attribute or fields and member method. I can define, right? Okay, same is the example for the student class. If you look at this as a table, then I will say that in that table there are three cells, one column and three rows. Okay, if you are inheriting a class, then don't write the inherited method. Don't write inherited methods. Okay, so typical format for the single class. Okay, diagram, UML diagram of a single class. So first of all, you need to write the visibility. Visibility is nothing but a access specifier. Okay, so if it is plus, then it is public. If it is hash, then it is protected. If it is minus, then it is private. If it is tilde, then it is package. That is applicable to Java, not in C++. And the slash is for the derived. Okay, so this derived fields will never be allocated any memory, because those fields will be computed using other fields, another from the other attributes values. Okay, and if any field is a static field, that is denoted by underlying that variable. Okay, so if by assume that here, if I put underline below the area, okay, automatically are you all able to see my PPTs now? Somebody unmute and tell me. Okay, fine. Okay, so on the right hand side, for the rectangle class and the student class, you can see that visibility symbols are used. So if you look at the rectangle, minus for width and height, so those are the private data member, then followed by the colon, then the type. Okay, if it is array, then you have to put it into the square bracket and count. Okay, so whatever I have shown here in a gray color, okay, in a gray color in the top side of this slide, that is optional. That is optional. So what is compulsory? Visibility, name, colon, type of that variable, that attribute. Okay, coming to the methods. Okay, class operations or methods. So again, same thing will be followed, only argument. Okay, argument list, formal argument list will be mentioned over here. And it is not necessary that you should specify the formal argument, only type will be suffice. But it is always better. It is always better to mention, to have the consistency. Okay. So again, visibility symbols are same, plus, hash, minus, and tilde for the package. Format is also same, visibility symbol, then name of that method, then list of the formal parameters, including the type. Okay, colon, then the return type. Colon, then the return type. Okay. In the parameter list also, name and then colon type. Again, the underline is used to represent a static method. Okay. And uh, after function overloading, I am going to discuss about the constructor. And in constructor, which are the special type of member functions. So when you mention about the constructor in the class diagram, we don't have to mention about the written type of those constructors. Okay. If you look at the class diagram of the rectangle on the RHS side, you will realize that there is one method, rectangle. Okay. There are two member method. One is rectangle and another is distance. So in front of the rectangle, which is nothing but a name of the class, it's a special method that is called constructor. There is no return type mentioned. No return type mentioned. Okay. Any doubt? Because that is all for the UML class diagram. Everyone has okay. I will do the next topic. So second part of today's class, to set some attributes of a particular class object. And if you look at on the right hand side, the fourth version of the set, you will realize that the functionality of that set function is completely different. You are trying to output something. Okay. So this is bad. It is not the case that compiler is going to give you an error. Okay. But it is a bad programming style. So you should overload the functions which are doing the similar kind of operation. Similar kind of operations. Okay. So soon we will be discussing that how the where the overloading is heavily used, that is for various operators. Okay. Now, before going ahead, we need to understand that is what is default argument. Okay. That is, if a function shows some default behavior most of the time, okay, and some exceptional behavior only once in a while, so it is always better. It is always better to specify default argument using overloading. Okay. So here there is an example of, this is a constructor. The next topic is constructor. So this is a special type of member function, okay, which helps for creating an object. Okay. So here, if you look at the main function, one object with the name movie is created. Okay. When any object is created, this constructor will get called. Okay. The constructor will get called. Now, if you expect that every time whenever an object is created, the value of frequency should be set to 1. Okay. The value of frequency should be set to 1. If that is the case, then you will see here that the default value has been set to 1. So though, if you look at this definition, invocation of a constructor here, we are just passing the char star. Okay. Only char star is passed. But if you try to print the very fields of this, you will realize that the frequency is automatically set to 1. Frequency is automatically, so this default argument can be set over here in the argument list, in the parameter list. Okay. So this is also one form of overlapping. This is also one form of overlapping. Can anybody tell me why? Why it is one form of overloading? Sorry, overlapping. Overloading. Anyone? Yes. Yes. Very correct. All the answers in the chat is Correct. Okay. So if I create, say, movie one, an object movie one, by passing some string over here, comma, say 2. And then if I create an object movie 2, okay. So here, if you look at, for the first object creation, I passed two parameters, two arguments. Whereas in the second, I passed only one. But for both of this, the same method will get called. The same method will get called. Okay. So in a way, I will say that by setting the default argument, I am overloading that member function in a two-way. That is, I will just write down the signature of that constructor. Word const char star s. This is one, and another is word const char star s comma int k. Okay, so this member method can take any form out of this two form. Okay, here is the example. I hope everyone got it. Any query? Yeah, very correct. The default argument, the parameters for which you want to set the values, okay, those parameter lists should be on the right, on the right. Okay, otherwise the compiler will not be able to differentiate, right? Compiler will not be able to handle it. So it should be always, if you want to set some default arguments, then all those default argument values default argument along with all values should be on the right hand side of the complete argument list. Any doubt? Anybody? Okay. There can be more than one default argument. This is one example. Okay. But here also you will realize that the default arguments are placed on the right hand side of that argument list. But now here it is a compulsion. What is a compulsion? That whenever you want to invoke download, this argument need to be passed. That is char program. This is compulsory. Okay. These are optional. If you don't pass it, it will take Linux. This will take zip. Okay. But you cannot do that you will pass this and you will pass this. No. Okay. It will be one-to-one correspondence. It will be one-to-one mapping. Whatever the list of argument you will be passed here, this first will get mapped to first, second will get mapped to second, and third will get mapped to third. So that mapping will be done from left to right, from left to right in the argument list. Is this clear? You can I can do this also. I mean, how many overloading forms this download function can have? Two or three? Yes, two or three. How many overloaded forms it will have? Anyone? Three. Very correct. Okay. One only with this argument. Second form is with these two arguments. Okay. And third form will be with this argument list. Okay. Now, once you mention this default argument in your .h file, okay, then you don't have to repeat it in the CPP, corresponding class CPP file. Okay. So summary of overloading. If we have more than one function definition with the same function name, that is nothing but overloading. So how to differentiate? By different number of formal parameters, or same number of formal parameters, but the type is different. Okay. Either on the number of parameters or on the type of the parameters you can overload. Remember, you cannot overload on the return type. Okay. Make a point. Note down this. You cannot overload on the return type. Why? Because there is no provision when the compiler was written, because they wanted to make C++ compiler compatible for the C. Okay. So this is the restriction while they develop the C++, because when in the assembly code, when we represent any function name, okay, or any function, so that function need to be represented at that level with the function name and the type of argument. Okay. The list along with the type. There were no provision for mentioning the return type. And that's why you cannot overload the any method, whether it is a member method or a non-member method, on the return type. Okay, remember this. Okay. So in some of the book, it is also called polymorphism, but this is not a pure form of polymorphism, which we talk in with reference to object oriented. Okay, but try to understand polymorphism. It's a many form. Okay, so it is just ad hoc polymorphism, not a pure form of the polymorphism. Okay, any doubt? I subject initialization. Okay, now we have done with the class definition declaration. Now we will make use of that class definition to create, to instantiate an instance of a class. Okay, it is just like a creating a variable, declaring a variable. Now, all of us knows that when we declare a variable, we don't know it memory is allocated, right? But we don't know what value actually it is having on that memory location. So if you try to read that data, it will use you some And problem of majority of the bugs in the big software is, is because of the not because of not not initialization is not done properly. Okay, it has been taken care while designing the C++ by by providing some feature in which when we will be creating an object at the same time, some value will be assigned to each and every field of that object. Okay, so of course that we need to incorporate in our program. If you don't incorporate it, then it will not. Then it will not. Okay, so initialization is very, very important. Okay. So this is one example I have given. In the previous example, the data member were public, but once I make data member uh, private, then it's very difficult for me to create a particular object or assign some values when the object is created. Okay, when the object is created. Okay, so in C++, the concept of constructors are introduced. Okay, so this is nothing but a more generalized mechanism for the user defined initialization of a class object with the help of some spatial member function, which is called a constructor. Okay, so here you can see one object is created without initializing any data member. Okay, without initializing. So whatever the garbage value will be there, every field will have that garbage value. We don't know. We don't have any control. But here, in the very next line, you can see that an object is created of the type word with a name director, and then this is assigned. This one string is assigned. Okay. Another is again another way of creation of an object. And here one pointer is created, and for that object, the space for that object of the type word is allocated dynamically on the heap, and there also you can initialize the data member. Okay, so how it is possible? All this is possible because of the constructor. Okay, so in other word, I can say that syntactically, a constructor of a class is a spatial member function having the same name as that of the class. Having the same name as that of the class. And try to remember that it will be invoked only when that object is being created for the first time. Okay, when the object is created. Okay, only then there only the constructor will be invoked. So you now onward we will consider that it is one of the member function. Only the thing is you and me cannot exercise the our execution control on that space constructor. It will be only invoked when any object of that class is being created. Okay, then irrespective when the object is created, right, whether that object is a permanent member of that function or it is being created temporarily by the compiler. Okay, irrespective of that, sometime we will I mean, for creating an object we will, because of the creation of that object in our code, as we have written the code accordingly, that constructor will be invoked. but sometime compiler is also required to construct temporary object. Okay, construct temporary object. There also the constructors are invoked. Okay, as I mentioned earlier, it will not have any return type. It will not have any return type. Now, the question arises, up till now, we have one class definition we have written. Okay, if you remember, I gave the class definition of time. There, while demonstrating, I haven't mentioned any constructor over there. But still, I could able to create an object in the main function. Then how it is possible? Okay, this is possible because this was possible because if you don't write constructor in the class definition, then the compiler will generate the default constructor for you. Okay, again, I would like to highlight that the it will generate a default constructor. If you don't give a definition of any constructor, right? Any constructor, then only the compiler will generate a constructor for you on your behalf. Is this clear? But remember, if there is no user defined, not a single user defined constructor in the class definition, then only compiler will generate default constructor. Default constructor means what? A constructor which is not having any argument. Okay, the argument list is empty. The argument list is empty. So if you see the machine code of the corresponding program, you will realize that some additional code is added here. Some additional code is added here. Okay, but this means that the compiler has added this definition, only this definition. Word empty parameter list and opening bracket and curly bracket and closing curly bracket. Okay, so because of this, what happened is there are two data members. There are two data members. Okay, so the space will be allocated. So when you execute the main function and when the system reaches, the execution control reaches, I mean, execute the statement. So the memory will be allocated. The name of the memory will be movie. Okay, whatever the memory address, irrespective of that, it will have two data members. One is int with the name frequency, and another is a char star pointer with the name str. With the name str. Okay, but still compiler is not responsible for initializing those memory locations. We cannot trust what value will be there in those memory locations. Okay, any doubt? Any doubt? Okay, let us see. Is this code correct? Yes, I cannot see chat. Okay, let me get out of this annotation. Yes, put in the chat what I'm saying. Okay, Nitinish is saying that it's error. Initialize frequency first and character later in case of default constructor not found. Yes, Nitin, you are correct. Vishakha, error. Error for first line, first statement, right? See, what is happening in this code? You have given the definition of one constructor. I am assuming that there is a definition, okay? This is called parameterized constructor, okay? Because two parameters are given. So it's a parameterized constructor. So here you try to invoke a constructor that to a default constructor. For this, what constructor will be invoked? This constructor should be invoked. I'm interested in this, okay? I'm interested in the signature of the constructor. Because you're not passing any argument over here with the name of the object. So it should invoke the default. But sadly, the default constructor definition is not given in the class definition. Okay, so compiler will report an error that no matching definition found. Okay, whereas here it's fine. This is fine because for this constructor will be invoked. Okay, so this suggests that, again I will repeat, if the class designer don't define any constructor, then only compiler will generate a default constructor for you for that class. Otherwise, compiler will not interfere. Okay, but as in this example, one constructor definition is given, that's why compiler will not bother. Okay, it will not generate the code for the default constructor. Is this clear? Any doubt? Always remember that compiler will generate default constructor only if there is not a single constructor given in the class definition. If you provide one definition, then compiler will not interfere in that code. Any doubt? Okay, so I hope there are no queries. So I will stop today's class over here. Okay, thank you.